total opposition to the liberal democracy that we've worked for decades to create from the time we became a country. Every time I hear about, not just the banned books, but every time I hear about the distortions that they've created in our curriculum, our school curriculum, such as, gee, you gotta tell the kids that there were benefits to slavery. Are you out of your mind? And so forth. So it isn't just banned books, it is the gag orders that are on our state, college, and university professors, and there's punishment, there's a Damocles sword hanging over their heads, because if they're found to color beyond the lines, they can lose school funding and be fired. If the teachers are found to, let's just say, tell the truth about whether it's Black studies, Hispanic studies, LGBT studies, they can, of course, face losing their jobs, and there are laws on the books that will charge you with a felony, not just because you may have colored outside the lines, but if it's deemed that you are teaching pornography or whatever. The point is, our teachers live in fear, our college professors live in fear. Not all of them, of course, some of them agree with this, and that's their choice, it's not my choice. But this is damn serious business. I am sure that you know about the countries across the world who've lost their liberal democracies and now are actually what I would call an illiberal democracy, which means it's fake. So at least you and I, there was a judge who questioned me about this once when I did a Zoom talk, saying if a certain person became president and is doing all these terrible things, how can you call us a liberal democracy? And my answer was, the architecture of the democracy is still there. So when we go to the polls, we still know that there are people monitoring those votes, that there are people who've checked the machines, that there are people who are going to check and recheck and recheck. We've got a whole long process in place to ensure the validity of our votes. Versus another country, I met a man who was in Lebanon. He was telling his friends that their votes didn't count. They didn't believe him. So he just walked into one of the so-called voting places, lifted up a whole box of ballots, and walked out with it. Nobody said a word. You know what's happened in Hungary. You know what's happened in Egypt. You know about Bolsonaro and so many of them. 60 countries in the last 2 years have either lost their freedoms or many of them. We just don't hear about it that much. But it's happening, and it's here. And we've got to do something about it. And talking about it is not going to change it. So my idea, our idea, my wonderful committee's idea was this. We give out the banned books that the government has taken from our kids, and from you, but mostly from our kids. We give them back the very same titles that the government has taken from them. And then they have access. I also created a brochure, somebody will give that to you soon, on how to start your own banned book club. It may sound easy, but for kids it isn't always that easy. First of all, they don't like to read, so we're going to encourage that. But you can't just have 12, 15 kids get together and decide that they're going to discuss a book. They need a starting point, they need guidelines. And we also included a QR code so that they can find out where they can get them free. There are lots of major libraries now that are offering them free. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, I was gonna go down there, but this is okay. And that's about a boy I love. You will know him. I was hoping the students would be here, but he's homeless. He was homeless. He had no mother. He had an alcoholic father who would show him once a year and beat him, get whatever money he could from him. So this kid lived on one foot in society and the other foot along a river. Lived by himself. He'd fish, keep himself going. And what was interesting about him was this. He developed a moral code. So when he was over here, living partly in society with an aunt, once in a while, he learned about the religious beliefs of the townspeople. He lived about their mores. When he was over here on the river, he developed his own moral code. Just by watching, there was something very special about him. And as I said, I love him. And one day, he was running away, and so was a black slave named Jim. Jim was running away because they threatened to sell him, and he wanted to be with his wife and his children, so he ran away. So the two of them got together, became friends, and Jim became the father figure that this boy never had. A good and decent man who'd never been to school, couldn't read, couldn't write, but he had a moral code that guided him. And so did this little boy, and you know who it is, Huckleberry Finn. And then, one day, Jim was captured. And he had to Huck had to make his decision. The society said, this is well, they didn't call him black. I'm not going to repeat the word, it's awful. But it was used frequently because they wanted to show us the truth about the society. And he said, I know I have to turn him in. He belongs to someone. He's somebody's property. This is what you're supposed to do, is return a slave to his owner because it's their property. But he loved Jim, and he knew how good Jim was. Jim protected him at all times. And so he stood there, and he said, if I hide him, if I protect him, I'm going to go to hell. And he said, okay, I'll go to hell then. And that's Huck. And I met him through a book. And I never would have met him if I didn't have this book. And that's why I'm standing here. I'm so happy to see you, because I know a lot of you, and I'm so sad the kids aren't here. We worked our heads off. But as you know, we are not allowed to contact the students through the schools, because they're scared too. They'll lose their funding if they were to support this program. Because it is our state government that's banned the books in the first place. Maybe some will come in, some not, but that's okay, because you're here, and you're going to spread the word. And that's what counts. And the other thing I wanted to tell them is about this book, which, goes back to the 1950s. Okay? And I decided to reread it for this program, and it still scares me. It's a scary freaking book, and yet so much of it is true. These people who've been brainwashed, it's mind control, they think television is their world. And all they care about is getting more television. And the firemen have jobs that are opposite of what we know. Their job isn't to put out fires. Their job is to start a fire and burn books, because books, you know what they promote critical thinking. And critical thinking is the enemy of despots. Critical thinking is the enemy of fascists. It's the enemy of authoritarians. So the people, especially his wife, who's a nutcase, she's complaining because she's got all her walls surrounded with these television sets, and she watches this crap all day long, with soap operas or whatever it is. And there's one wall that's empty, and she can't stand it, because she's got to fill that world in, because that's all she knows. How many people do we know are home now because they're watching TV or shopping or anything, and they're not here? You're here because you obviously care about fighting censorship, and you know what the heck is going on. But as I said, 60 countries have lost either all or some, or most, I should say, of their freedom. So think about that. And the other thing I want to say is, as far as the curriculum changes go, as you know, we had a watering down, let us say, of Black history, of Hispanic history. We even had a book for elementary kids, which we have copies out there, about Roberto Clemente. How can you ban Roberto? That's how crazy this is. This isn't a matter of, oh, it's filth. You know, the Monks for Liberty, have you seen them on TV? How many? Anybody seen them on TV? What do? They get up and they read a passage about sex. They don't read anything else, but they read the passage. Oh, like their kids have not heard this before? Now, I bought, some of you donated, and thank you very, very much. And Simon & Schuster, who's become our partner, has donated. My friend Peter out there gave us a zillion books. I read a lot of them. Some of them, I'll be honest with you, I was an English teacher. I wouldn't put them out, not because they're salacious or anything. It's just not that great literature. Teen life, okay. But if the kids want to read them, that's okay. But they're not pornographic. And they don't promote senseless violence. There's stories about it's what your kids, their kids, our kids, our grandkids are already talking about and already thinking about and actually living. So you take away authors who've decided to take a critical look at living and offer us their point of view, offer us sometimes solutions. And the worst of it is this. LGBTQ kids don't exist. You know, the so-called don't say gay law, and people say, well, it doesn't say that. Who cares? That's what it means. And it says, now I'm quoting because I wrote an op-ed on this topic. It's actually about vouchers. And here's what the law says. The sex you're born with is immutable and cannot be changed. And any variation thereof you can't do. So, kids who are gay, lesbian, trans, whatever they don't exist because to talk about them is illegal. It really is. That's a law. It's not a policy, it's a law. Can you imagine how they feel sitting in these classrooms? Can you imagine how a Black or Hispanic child feels sitting when they start to hear about this distorted history that slavery was, an economic issue? So it's one big package. There are lawsuits right now filed by college, university professors, again, because of the gag orders, and they're fighting this, and then we're going to go into it. So our next great guest speaker, and I thank him so much, this is Dan Sweeney, who is the Deputy Opinions Editor for the Sun Sentinel newspaper. I wouldn't want, of course, I was working for a newspaper, and it's the best job I ever had, but I couldn't do what he does, because he decides which of your letters to the editor get printed, or your opinion pieces, and which don't. And obviously, he's got to figure out, how do I reflect the society? So, Dan?
First off, I want to thank June and Reed Fan folks for inviting me. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
First, I want to thank June and Reed Band Books for inviting me. My name is Dan Sweeney, as June said, and I'm the Deputy Opinions Editor for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Real quick before I get into some context of what June was saying earlier, I do want to stress that second word of that title, opinions, because it explains why I'm up here talking to you right now. As a member of the Sun Sentinel editorial board, I'm responsible for, as June said, things like op-eds, letters to the editor, and the paper's own opinion pieces, the editorials. All the stuff that appears on the opinion page of the paper. I and other members of the editorial board do not write for the newsroom. We don't go covering news stories. And the people that are in the newsroom, the street news reporters, don't write anything for us. So there's sort of a wall there, just like there's a wall between the whole newsroom and advertising. Which is important, and it's why I can stand up here today, and why if she had asked, say, a typical reporter in the newsroom to be up here, they would probably have told her no, because they have to maintain a perception of objectivity. That being an opinion writer, I do not. As for me though, I speak for the Sun Sentinel editorial board, and I think most newspapers around the country, when I say that we stand unequivocally for free expression, for free speech, and for freedom of the press. We have to. our jobs depend on it. So it's with some relief that I can tell you that there are no book bans happening in Florida. At least that's the case if we believe our governor, who has called the idea that books are banned in Florida a hoax. In fact, he's done that numerous times, most recently in a televised debate between him and California Governor Gavin Newsom. But the literary organization PEN America counted 1,406 book bans in Florida in the past school year. Now, maybe you think that PEN America is filled with, fuzzy-headed, bleeding-heart liberals that can't math well. But if that's the case, then you can just rely on Governor DeSantis' own administration. Because his Department of Education, earlier this school year, to make sure that all the districts were complying with his law, had them report to the Board of Education how many books have been removed from their districts. So this is just self-reported, so the number is lower. 300 books from 20 out of 67 school districts. Now, when he's called on this, the governor will say, well, the only materials removed from school libraries are pornography. As though school libraries were littered with old copies of Hustler or something. But let's have a look at the Department of Education's own list of books banned here in South Florida. Now, happily, it's pretty short. According to that list, there were 6 books in Palm Beach County schools that were flagged by someone, whether that be a concerned parent, whether that be Moms for Liberty, whether that be whoever. Somebody said, hey, this book doesn't belong in our schools. And out of those 6, none of them were removed. You go down to Miami-Dade, there were 5 books flagged. None of them were removed. In Broward County, 12 books and 3 were removed. So what are those 3 that, I guess, according to Governor DeSantis, are pornography? Well, there were 2 of them that are about going through puberty. They are called It's Perfectly Normal and Let's Talk About It. And then there's a 3rd book, a children's book called A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, which is a children's book about a male rabbit who gets married to another male rabbit. And just so you all know, despite the reputation of rabbits, there is no actual, rabbit fornication in this book. There's no pictures of that, no mention of it, anything like that. At the end of it, they go down to, they get married, they sleep next to each other, and they dream of their honeymoon. Obviously it's not pornography. Pornography by definition is obscene, so what's obscene about that? You have to conclude that the only thing that could be seen as obscene, I guess, is the existence of gay men. And there we may be getting closer to the actual intent of a lot of these bans, which so often target books relating to LGBT issues due to that parental rights and education law, what a lot of people call the Don't Say Gay law. If you'll recall, a couple years ago, that was initially sold as being banning the instruction of sexual orientation for grades K through 3, because it's protecting children, right? Now, never mind the law. Even that law, when it was passed then, said, covered further grades by saying, it has to be done in a manner that's, in keeping with the age group. What does that mean? There's no definition in the law. Teachers are scared to even touch the subject, so it doesn't get touched, right? But even that doesn't matter anymore, because last year, the legislature expanded it to cover all grades through 8th grade. And the Board of Education voted it should cover all grades through 12th. So now you're talking about banning any instruction on sexual orientation through 12th grade for people who are legal adults. Very clearly, it's not a hoax, and as these books are very clearly not pornography, you can only assume that, there's something else going on there. And, banning books does not protect children. It shields them from the ideas that shape our world. It denies them the opportunity to engage critically with diverse perspectives. It stifles critical thinking and empathy. And as this is not a hoax, and this is not pornography, you can only assume that the stifling of critical thinking and empathy is just maybe the point of the whole business. I don't want to bring anybody down here, but given the state of his presidential campaign, it's safe to say that Florida has 2 more years with Ron DeSantis in the governor's mansion. So this war on woke stuff is not going away anytime soon. And maybe it has to be a tremendous difference in your daily lives. So there's a few less books in the school libraries. How many times have you checked books out of the library, out of your school library anyway, right? I mean, if you can remember back when you were in school, you know, maybe, I hope the answer was a lot. But for a lot of people, it was maybe once or twice, maybe never. But here's the thing. This sort of stuff, cracking down on minority viewpoints that those in charge of the system don't share, it doesn't usually end well or quickly. Maybe it doesn't matter that kids in elementary school will tragically never get to read the tale of Marlon Bundo. But what does matter is why it's happening. There may not be a lot of books banned here in South Florida, but there were plenty up in the Panhandle where Escambia County is. Book bans there are the subject of an ongoing federal lawsuit, and in defending banning books from school libraries in that case, our Attorney General Ashley Moody had something interesting to say that I want to quote. Public school systems, including their libraries, convey the government's message. The government has no constitutional obligation to present educational material with which it disagrees. So you see, it's not really even just about not saying gay or denying access to critical race theory or what have you. Our state leaders believe that the only information to which you should have access in a public school setting is the information that they agree with. I think everyone in this room can imagine the end of that sort of slippery slope. I started speaking today by explaining that aside from being morally correct, we in the press tend to stand behind the First Amendment because it's the only thing that really allows us to do our jobs. The government controlling what you're allowed to read is antithetical to the free press and to the fundamentals of democracy. And what's worse, it would send me to the unemployment line. So I appreciate your time. I want to give you a couple of quick things. If you want to, get your message out to the community, obviously, as Deputy Opinions Editor of Sun Sentinel, I think the paper is a great way to do it. If you want to write a letter to the editor, please do. The email there is just letters@sunsentinel.com. It's easy to remember. Try to keep letters to a couple of hundred words. If you want to write a full-fledged guest essay, what we in the industry call an op-ed, it should be between 550 and 750 words. And please include a 1 or 2 sentence bio and your own headshot. We won't publish all those, but generally speaking, we tend to publish most of the letters that come in. So if you want to get your point of view out there and make sure that other people that are reading the paper know they're not alone, hit me up. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. By the way, he's really good. I watch what he and Steve Busquet do, and sometimes I am just amazed that they can really reflect us all, even though some people write things that I hate. So thank you so much. Our next speaker, wow. Are you lucky and am I lucky? Her name is Miss Renee O'Connor. She's a hero. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She was a little girl in Jamaica who dreamed of coming to the United States, was impressed by Barack Obama, who wasn't, and decided that later that she was going to teach African American history. I don't even have it in front of me, so I'm going to ad-lib it. I think I know it. Well, she did. And she was so good that she, sorry about that she was one of 4 out of 18,000 teachers nominated for Teacher of the Year.
Yeah.
I thought nobody nominated me, but that's okay. On top of that, you all heard about the new College Board AP African American History course, right? I didn't know about it, so I read some of it, and then I looked at what educators across the country were saying. It was terrific. It got such praise, except from Governor Ron DeSantis, who said it violated Florida law. Of course, Florida law is his law, which is Moms for Liberty law, which is a law for a tiny little group of people who hate everything but themselves. And maybe you've read about the co-founder and her hubby who espouse family values, not mine, but anyway, her hard work, her heart was in this. So that's just some of what she has done. She has been praised for her teaching, for her passion, for her knowledge. And I want to tell you one more thing that she did recently. I was going to read it, but I'll let her tell you. I apologize, we were a little bit late and dancing up here to entertain you because we had to get some stuff up here. Also, I was going to give you a quiz, and somebody erased the flash drive. So you won't have to do the quiz. So just let me tell you that I'm going to introduce Renee O'Connor to tell her own story. And I think you'll go home with your spirits higher and a willingness to find. I want you to become members of Read Band Books. I want you to help us in our next project. I apologize for the smaller audience, but it's I have to say one more thing. You know that the school system, as I said, would not let me send a message about the program through the kids. I don't know how to reach them. So I'm standing outside handing out flyers and so forth. And I haven't been feeling well, but yesterday, is my big day. Twice they called the police on me. One guy spit at me. Another guy said I was selling pornography. And then I went to Dunkin' Donuts, where a lot of the kids hang out after school. And Dunkin' Donuts said I could be in there. Okay, so I'm handing out flyers. And there is a man in line buying donuts, and he was rude and nasty to the Dunkin' Donuts staff. I don't know what the problem was, but he was horrible. Now, I'm outside Omni Middle School, which is just across the street. Again, not on their property, I'm on a public sidewalk, and I see the same guy. He happens to be one of the teachers. They were giving a Christmas concert here yesterday, so it might be music, whatever. And he lit into me. He called me a bitch. I can't repeat what else he called me. And then I found out just this morning that when they finally got from there to here, they walked over, that he took the flyers that I had given the kids, he took them away from them. He took them all away. So they couldn't bring them home to their parents to get permission because they didn't have any information. That's why they're not here now. He took them all away. And one more thing, one of the cops that was really so nasty, and again I said, I haven't been feeling well, and I think part of me, if I hadn't been sick, I just got out of the hospital, I would have said to the cop, leave me alone. I'm on a public sidewalk. But I didn't want to spend a night in jail. I wouldn't be here today, number one. And I was tired. So, I just took it. And I said, but sir, I'm on a public sidewalk. I'm not on their property. He goes, that's your version. You know what that reminded me of? Our young black men who get pulled over by police and they end up dead. That's your version? They can say, what did I do? I've done nothing wrong. Maybe they did. Not everybody's an angel, right? We've got this thing in this country, once you're dead, all of a sudden there's a canonization of everybody. But most of them, they haven't done anything. Or if they have, there's no death penalty that should go with it. Now what happened to me is nothing compared to that, but it was a feeling. The minute that cop said, that's your version, it meant I was nothing. He could have said that I would, whatever, and I could have spent, the evening in the police station, or whatever, because it'd be, and the other cop said to me that he believes in what Governor DeSantis is doing, and I'm selling pornography. So, one of the reasons why we don't have that place filled with kids, now you know. The next time we have a program, I'm going to have a built-in audience, so this won't happen again, and I hope you join us. And it isn't going to be just band books. There are other things to fight. You know that, and we're going to be able to do that. Okay, Renee O'Connor, you're going to love her.
This is my protein shake, because I'm starting my New Year's resolution early. No? Okay. So, thank you, June, for, I don't even need them, but thank you. Thank you, June, for inviting me. As she said, my name is Renee O'Connor. I was born in the most beautiful country in the world, Jamaica. Has anybody ever been? Yes. I was born in Kingston, and in the 70s, Jamaica was looking like it was going to be a little bit like Cuba. So my parents brought me to America for the American dream. Neither of my parents went to college, so I'm a true first generation. I grew up in Miami. I actually attended the school that I teach at, so I graduated from, it's a school called Miami Norland Senior High. We actually just went to Tallahassee for the football championship the other day. We didn't make it, but we were undefeated the entire year. And I went through school, and I loved school, and I was very inquisitive and attentive and curious as a young girl. And throughout my years in school, my parents had always told me, I want to be a teacher. You can't be a teacher, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer. This is a Caribbean thing, an Indian thing, an African thing. You can't be a teacher. Teachers don't make any money. And so I went off to school. I went to Florida State University. Any Seminoles? No? Okay. I went off to Florida State University, and I did international relations. And then I lived all across. I lived in Atlanta, I lived in New York, I lived in Philly. I came back home, and I ended up working in hospitality. So I worked in corporate America. I worked for Ritz-Carlton for 18 years doing revenue management, nothing with teaching. In 2010, I was ironing my clothes, and I was listening to President Obama, as June was saying, and he was talking about the state of education in America, and that there were kids that can't read on grade level. I don't have any kids of my own, so I was shocked. I was like, what? American kids can't read on their grade level? So I started doing some research, and it was true. We have a slew of students around the country, particularly black and brown, that are reading several, sometimes 6, 7 grades below their grade level. And so the very next week, just the way the universe works, I found out about this organization called Teach for America. Anybody familiar with it? And I applied just for a whim. I loved my corporate America job. I mean, I worked for Ritz-Carlton, which meant I could go to any Ritz-Carlton in the world, and I only had to pay $50. So, that was a big, so I was traveling all over the place. I worked for Ritz-Carlton, Jamaica, Cancun, St. Thomas, and Puerto Rico, so not a very bad job, right? So I was traveling and living the life of luxury with Ritz-Carlton. I applied and I got in, and I had to make a decision, and I left my life, which my family was not very happy about. I'm going to quit my corporate America job, making 6 figures, and I'm going to cut my salary in half because I want to make a difference and I want to give back. I wasn't intending to stay as long as I have, so this is my 13th year teaching. Usually Teach for America, you stay for 2, maybe 3. Just because I loved it so much. So when I first started teaching, I was put in an English classroom where I was teaching 10th grade English, but my students read on a 4th grade level. And I had to get them to pass that. Back then it was like the FCAT, you guys, everybody familiar? And in the first 2 years of teaching, not one of my students ever passed. They got closer, but it's very difficult, almost impossible, to get somebody reading on 4th grade level in 7 months to pass a 10th grade test. But I was doing everything. I'm staying at school till 8 o'clock at night. I'm reading, I'm differentiating, I'm phonicsing, I'm doing everything I can do, and it wasn't successful. And I had kids basically passing out crying on my steps when they would get the scores back and you didn't pass. Because if you don't pass 10th grade FCAT, you can't graduate. So it's a huge thing in the state of Florida. And so I went to my principal and I said, you know what? And I'm teaching at a black school with black kids, black administration. I said, I had an idea. I think that I should be able to teach African American history. I can include the reading standards and the English standards, and I promise they will read and write essays. But I found that most of these kids don't know anything besides Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, maybe Rosa Parks, right? Because I'll ask them, who are the most influential African Americans? They will say like, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, LeBron. I'm like, what? What about James Baldwin? Do we know anything else? They had clueless, right? And these are black kids. And so he first said no, and his analogy was like, why would I take the football quarterback and put him in I don't even know what he was talking about. He didn't want his good English teacher to move into an elective. So I did what any logical person would do. I threatened to quit. And then the very next day, he called me, Mr. Connor, wait. Okay, so we found you some African American history classes. So he allowed me. So for the past 9 years, I've been teaching African American history. I also teach a Cambridge class called Global Perspectives. I've taught a class called Thinking Skills. I teach AP Human Geography. I teach a slew of other subjects. I'm also the Holocaust advocate at school, the voting rights advocate at school, the women's rights advocate at school, the African American. Actually, 2 years ago, I signed up more kids in my school than any other high school in Miami to register to vote. And I encouraged 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds to register as well, so that the day they turn 18, they could get their voters registration. And I do that through showing them clips of what happened in Selma, and I do that through showing them how much people in this country, black, brown, white, yellow, pink, went through to get the ability to vote. Especially me, who I'm not even from here. I had to take a test. I had to pay money to become an American. And the test that I took, I don't think a lot of Americans could actually pass, and that's a whole nother story. And I am a teacher who stands up every single morning when the Pledge of Allegiance is done, because I believe in this country. I love where I'm from, but this is absolutely the only place I wouldn't even want to live in Jamaica right now. I can go and visit, lay on the beach, have a margarita, but I'm coming back to the United States of America. I love Target, and I love CVS, so I'm coming back here. And I love 24-hour service, Uber Eats, all of that. I'm very American. And so, 2 years ago during the pandemic, when teachers finally were getting their praise, we came back and we were in the classroom. I don't know if you remember, it was like November, December of 2020. And immediately, this is where my protest began. And I didn't start out this way. Immediately, they started testing kids. I don't know if you remember this. And I was so appalled. I said, I have kids that can't even take their hoodie off. We're all masked up, we're sitting, there's tape on the classroom, don't come near me. Teachers are spraying kids with Lysol, and you want to make the kids take a test right now? But we're happy that they're even here, right? And so I actually took 3 days off from school and I flew to Atlanta, and I was part of a protest against standardized testing, because I felt like I was talking about it to my kids. So if I teach, this is how it all started. If I teach a class called African American History, where I teach my students about the sacrifices that so many Americans gave their lives, and the spitting that you were talking about, that's nothing compared to what was happening in the 50s and the 60s, right? But this is how it all starts. And I don't myself stand up for what I believe is wrong, then what kind of a hypocritical teacher am I? If I'm teaching you this is what people do, this is what you should do, and I don't do it myself, I had to call myself out. So I flew to Atlanta, and I was very open with my principal and my vice principal. I had to take days off, so it was like calling sick days. And I stood up in front of it was near the Atlanta downtown city hall, and protested with signs about my kids in Miami deserve better. We shouldn't be taking a test right now, we should be doing mental therapy. We should just be happy the kids are showing up right now. They lost family members, their grandmother is no longer with them, and we're gonna give them a test, but anyway. So that's where it kind of all started. And I have been very vocal with my African American history class. I have shared my lessons with teachers around the country. And then again, just as June mentioned, 2 years ago, I was nominated for my Teacher of the Year at my school, and in the district, and in the region. And I was one of the 4 on the podium for the final, out of 18,000, it's a big deal in Miami Dade. They give away a car, you get a lot of money. But I was just so impressed that teachers what I teach, African American history, were given a little bit of hype up. People are like, oh, this is a class, you can take this. There are not many, very many schools that offer this as a class. And so I have been really adamant about sharing what I learned, because Black history can't just be during February. Black history in this country for Renee O'Connor should be every day. That's what the Constitution, the Educational Constitution says, right? So this summer, earlier this year, let me back up, the governor of Florida decided to start banning certain things within my classroom, African American history. One of them being a project called the 1619 Project, which is one of the books that are banned. And I used to teach the 1619 Project. I would introduce it in my class as another way of thinking. Never ever am I trying to indoctrinate students at all. We can hardly get your kids to turn in homework. We are not indoctrinating students, right? We can't get them to read anything. So, banning books is doing them such a disservice. Some of the books that are on the shelf are actually some of the books that I use to introduce kids that have never ever in their life read a book from cover to cover. There are 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds that can actually tell you, I've never read a book from cover to cover. So what we do as teachers is we hook them with a book that could be interesting to them or that they can see themselves in hopes that it leads them into reading other things. Because obviously when you go off to college, you're gonna have to read a slew of things. All right, so during summer, I was in Montgomery, Alabama, with the SPLC, that's the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Equal Justice Initiative for a week-long professional development on slavery in America, because Montgomery is where it all went down. This is right before the chair incident. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the chair incident. You can look it up. It's kind of hilarious. And while I was there, I was on a bus full of teachers, black, blonde, brown, Native American, and that is when the governor and the state of Florida sent down the new standards for African American history. This is outside of AP. Where one of the standards that middle school teachers in the state of Florida are to teach their students that slavery actually benefited some of the enslaved individuals. That's when I said, I can't do this anymore. So although this is my 13th year in the classroom, that was the statement that got me, that said, I'm no longer going to be silent about this. I have to speak up. I actually thought there would be more teachers that would be willing to speak up in their classrooms, in their schools, in their communities. Teachers are so scared with their little $50,000 a year paycheck of being blackballed, of being fired, of being shunned in their schools and their communities, that I can hardly find teachers to come with me to events. So when Jude invited me, I said, let me invite my teacher friends that feel the same way I do. No, nobody wants to speak up, nobody wants to talk. It's shocking to me. That's been the most shocking thing to me on my journey. Luckily for me, and for you, and my students, I don't care. And I'm going to speak up as much as possible, solely because of what I teach. And the fact that change in this country has come because of individuals who have maybe thought they couldn't, their one word or going to one event was not going to matter, but it actually does. One person can really, really make a difference. So when I teach my kids and I call them my kids because they're my students or my kids, when I teach my students to speak up for things that are happening in school, for example, there's no toilet paper in the bathroom, which happens, right? There's no paper towels, there's not enough chicken wings at lunch. If I'm teaching them to speak up when something is not in place, and I have to do so too. Because I can't tell you to do something and I'm not doing myself. So as a result of me starting to speak up, a bunch of lawyers in Miami through an organization called the Community Justice Project heard about my journey and what I was doing and invited me to go to the United Nations in Switzerland about 6 weeks ago to speak up because the United States, shockingly, has been brought up on charges that we are not adhering to our human rights initiatives. And we were one of the first countries to even sign it. So they asked me, and I was like, I wanted to say, hey, I'll go, but I was like, absolutely, I will join you on this adventure. And they took me along with them, and I was given an opportunity to sit in front of the International Court, which is made up of 18 worldwide leaders. The American member recluses themselves, this is protocol, and other countries are there. So in this little conglomerate of countries that are breaking the rules were Kuwait, United States, Iran, and Iraq. So we were isn't that a great group to belong to, right? And so I gave my speech, which I'm gonna share with you in a little bit. I was given 2 minutes, and the international community was, very impressed with what we have to say. And then America gets an opportunity, so the Department of Justice sends individuals to then report back on what I had to say. And my speech was about freedom of expression, the language that is used in classrooms, the standards that are being passed out by the state, and of course I had something to say about AP African American history being banned. If you're following this in the news in the last few weeks, maybe last week, it's finally, because of 50,000 changes, now being reintroduced. But even now that it's being reintroduced, some states are deciding, even though you revised it and you took out everything we didn't like, we still don't want to have it being taught in our classrooms. So one of the reasons, again, that I'm on sabbatical this year is to be able to show up and speak without bringing too much attention to my school. Not that I feel that I will be shunned by administration, but I wanted to do this on my own, and I have the ability to stay home for a year. It's actually been very nice. I'm also finishing up my master's. I'm doing instructional design online through Florida State, so I'll be done in April, so it gives me an opportunity to spend time to really concentrate on my master's, but solely it was done because of that standard that came out. So me having the ability to stand up for myself and to speak up for teachers that feel the same way but are not able to stand in front of a crowd such as yourselves is my way of fighting back. It's my resistance, it is my revolution, and I really do believe that even though I know June was expecting a lot of kids and a lot more people, she really wanted to pack the house, each person here, even if you just take one book, you know your kids, you know your grandkids, take one of those banned books home, share it with your kids, wrap it up under the tree. We've gotten away of giving books, to me, sometimes are given from parents and grandparents as a punishment. If you don't do this, you're gonna have to read. I think we're looking at it incorrectly. Books should be under the Christmas tree and given away for Hanukkah. They should be a prize, and it should be, if you don't do this, you won't be able to read tonight. So I think we're kind of flipping the switch on what reading should be about. If you look at your kids and your grandkids and your nieces and nephews and your neighbors, they're attached to the phone. This you know, right? I 100% guarantee they are not reading books on the phone. They are playing video games, they are TikToking and all those other kind of things. And what we are doing is we are creating a group of young people that have no critical thinking. And we need to be able to reverse that a little bit by injecting some of these good books that you have in the hallway. All books, right? And so what's happening with the books, teachers are absolutely afraid. Some of my teachers have told me that you can't even hang up inspirational quotes on the wall in the classroom this year. If there's too many colors, it might look like a rainbow, so you can't do it. If it says, just do it, let's look, like what's the side, black and white, okay, red, green, looks like a rainbow, no. And so teachers have their walls, they're too scared to do anything. It's actually shocking. And if you don't believe me, volunteer one time. You can volunteer without doing your fingerprints for one day. I know in Miami-Dade that's the way it works. So if you're ever curious as to what's happening in the classrooms, just volunteer. Sign up to be a substitute, volunteer in the classrooms, and talk to the kids and see what's happening. But Renee O'Connor from Kingston, Jamaica decided that I can no longer and will not be a silent person in what is happening in Florida and in our country, because I love it here so much that I have chosen to now use my voice to speak up anywhere and everywhere that I'm invited to talk about that teachers are concerned about what's happening in the classroom. We do care about your kids. Let them read what they want and decide who they're going to be. And I really do think that change will come when more of us stand up and speak up about the way we feel. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much. I wanted to play one, I think it went away, so I don't know if the computer person, I don't know how to get it back. It's quick 2 minutes. This is what you'll see that I was really nervous because we're in Geneva in the big room. It was shocking. I can't tell you whether it's coming up. My week in Switzerland, when I would mention, oh, I'm from Miami. They're like, Florida? You live in Florida? Yes, I live in Florida. People in Switzerland know the name of the governor in Florida. Does anybody in the room, and I was asking some of the ladies outside, does anybody in here know who is the mayor of Geneva or the president of Switzerland? So when I said, hi, oh my gosh, you're a teacher. Oh my gosh, where are you from? I'm from Miami, Florida. You're from Florida? And they would say, you know, the governor's name. So this was my speech.
I have more information on Florida for you. in a predominantly Black high school in Miami Gardens, Florida. A few years after I started teaching, I realized that most of my students knew very little about the important role Black Americans played in shaping America. Their experience with Black history was limited to 28 days in February, a time that we celebrate in the United States as Black History Month. After advocating for 2 years, I was finally able to teach African American history course. Since developing the class, I have taught more than 2,000 students and shared the curriculum with educators across the country. Over the last year, the Florida government has instituted radical changes, forcing teachers to retract and in some instances erase what we teach in the classroom. This year, the Florida government banned the teaching of advanced placement African American history in Florida. This both harms Black students as well as other students and delegitimizes the field of African American studies. For me, the biggest affront came this summer when the new Florida curriculum standards around African American history were passed and included some nonsense quotes such as, slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit, end quote. I wouldn't even consider voicing that absurdity. Florida's current education climate is stifling, repressive, and regressive. Teaching African American history is a way to promote a more just and fair society. Isn't this what America is supposed to be about? As much as I love teaching, I can't be in a classroom right now. I'm on sabbatical and not sure if I will return. I will not be part of an education system that not only withholds the truth, but deliberately lies to its students. This is my protest. By being in the classroom, I can speak out and fight. Today, I urge all of you in the room, especially the members of this committee, to ask the United States government how they plan to make sure that teachers in Florida are granted their freedom of expression to teach the truth without fear of being targeted or losing their jobs. Students in Miami, students in Florida, and students across the United States deserve to learn the truth about this country, America, even when these truths are uncomfortable.
Okay. So I just thank you guys for having, thank you ladies and gentlemen, I always say guys and now I'm not saying friends. Say hi, thank you friends for listening to what I had to say today. Teachers care, and I plan to speak up as long as I have a breath for what I think is right, and the fact that students should be able to read what they want, teachers should be able to teach the truth, and hopefully our state will see that to be the truth as well. Thank you so much.
We got a hero, and we got Dan who stands for the critical importance of a free press to a democracy. There is no democracy without a free press. You guys have any questions? Dan's still here, and Renee's questions we can bring. Hold on, we'll get you a microphone. This is BJ, one of our committee members. Who had a hand up? Start here.
Thank you all so very much. Hi, thank you all so very much for your willingness to take time out of your busy schedules to come and address us today. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Sweeney because he published my letter to the editor. When the movie Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret was shown, and we had a talk back about it, and I wrote something which pointed out something I think you alluded to, that to ban things in 12th grade or 11th grade when people are 17 and 18 years old, when the age of consent is 18, it seems very unwise, and that a movie or a book like Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which talks about puberty, when we know that some youngsters as young as 10 start menstruating, and as young as 10 deliver children. That's the case. There was an abortion case that was earlier debated this year. We really have to get over that. But my question is, from my understanding, there is no state law that mandates book banning. It comes from the local level up. that to ban a book, you have to go to the school and say, I want this book removed, and then it goes through some sort of review process, and then at the end, the local school board can make a decision to ban it or not. Is that correct?
Okay, well, okay, so. All right, there. Okay, so there is a state law. Before I went over to the opinion side of the paper, I was the state politics reporter for the paper. So I would go to Tallahassee for 2 months out of the year every year and live and work up there and leave my family behind. And I stopped doing that, and it has been a vast improvement to my marriage. But one of the laws that was passed in the years that I was going up there was a law addressing this exact thing. And what it did was, even previous to when I was up there was a state law saying, hey, you can, if you're a parent, object to stuff that's being taught in your schools. But a fellow, I want to say the sponsor was Tom Lee, but passed a law a few years back saying that a member of the community, not a parent, a member of the community can object. So people that weren't parents, didn't have kids in the school system, anybody could object to a book that was being taught in the school. Now, what happens then is on the local level. So, they object and say, hey, this is a problem, and then that is handled at the local level, the district looks at it and all that. But the framework by which it happens, that's all passed under state law. I hope I'm not wrong with any of this, because there's a state lawmaker sitting at the back of the room, and I'm terrified that I'm going to be completely wrong. But yeah, I think that about covers it, though. So it's, the framework is passed and created at the state, but the decision is a local decision.
Any other questions?
I have a comment that I have to make. I've been in education for over 50 years. I worked in New York City. I worked in areas where police would even walk down the street unless there was another policeman with them. I understand that the key to good teaching, and I was very impressed with what you had to say, is that understand that sometimes you'll have students that can't learn what you're teaching them, but a good teacher will teach them what they can learn. And one of the most important tools a teacher has are books. And to take books away from those children is really a crime. Every child in our country is entitled to a free and appropriate public education. I can't help but believe that the ground rule here, coming from the Republicans in this state, is to destroy public education. Because when parents recognize the fact that they can take a system to court and gain funds to put their children in private schools, money comes out of the district fund. And public education, it'll be gone. And we have to be aware of where we're going, what direction we're going in at this point. And I thank you for being vocal. And I just hope other teachers have your courage to push and also to educate parents about what direction we're going in. And I thank you for your time.
I just want, and I appreciate everything that has been said and everything that you have done and that you do. So don't misunderstand this question. I just want to be real clear about from the local up. So in other words, the school boards make the decisions which books can be used and which books are adopted and so on. Have any books been removed at the direction of the Board of Education, specifically from a state down?
Not to my knowledge, that's not the way.
And that would include the libraries I'm talking about, yeah.
To my knowledge, it's handled at a district level. So
There's 67 districts in 67 districts in Florida, and so it's a district by district decision. And what I found, you can Google it. There's a spreadsheet that's updated almost every day. So you would Google Palm Beach County or Miami-Dade County or Broward County. What are the books that are banned? And it's by segmented elementary school bans, middle school banned books, high school banned books. And how it starts is from a parent. So a parent or a community member or anyone can just say, I don't like that Little Red Riding Hood is being read in my child's 4th grade classroom. So there's a form they fill out, and then they first send it, you send it to Tallahassee with the name of your district. And then Tallahassee sends it to your district, and then they do an investigation. And then the book is pulled immediately, because now it is being investigated. So while the book is being pulled, it is no longer allowed on the shelves until the investigation is done, and they say year and year. I can tell you what I have noticed is as you go up the state of Florida, more and more books are banned. The further up 95 you go, and you can make your assumptions there. In Miami-Dade, there are 0. There have been several that have been, the forms have been filled out by parents, but thankfully the superintendent has said no, or the school board has said no. So they are flagged, but they have not been banned. There's a few in Broward, a little bit more in Palm Beach, and then as you go up to like Pasco and Orange County, it's a slew. And what seems to happen is they'll pick an author and they just will attack that author. So whatever that author did. I can tell you the other day I was teaching a class for teachers in Miami-Dade, and I made decorations of like crayons and flowers for the centerpieces. There was about 500 teachers, so 50 tables. And on the bottom of the books, just to raise the books up, I picked 2 books that were matched my color scheme, a green book and a white book. I didn't even look at the authors' names. It was really just because it looked pretty with what I was doing. And this is through a nonprofit called the Idea Expo through the Education Fund. And we set up the event stage, and because our superintendent was coming, some of the people, even though it's not banned, there was one of the authors wrote a book another book, not that book, that was banned in another state. People were like, no, we don't want anybody to say anything. So even though it was allowed, people are so nervous about their names or a picture being taken. I was shocked, so I was like, gosh, you have me here, the banned book teacher and the African American teacher talking, but you're gonna still remove it, and that was not my decision. So that's how scared people are, even having a book that's associated with the author of another book in another state. They're like, just so that we have no drama, let's just take the books off. So they just left the crayons and the flowers. So that's just what's happening. People are so afraid of, being attached to this or attached to that, and we're losing sight of, the fact that a lot of our kids can't read, and that's the real thing. And I was talking to June the other day. The real thing is when we listen to the music that you play in the car, and if you have any family members, and I'm not talking about banning music, right? Because I was around when 2 Live Crew started that whole thing in Florida, right? We have freedom of speech, freedom of expression in this country. So, but if you listen to some of the lyrics that are playing in the radio, which is when you leave and go in the car today, that's playing on the radio, or you walk into your kids' room while they're playing video games. Have you guys ever walked up on a video game lately? And what they're doing in the video games and what they're saying is nothing good. It's shocking what is not banned and is being banned in this country. But I have a lot more. I can't, yeah.
I just want to add two big things to what she was saying. First off, it's absolutely true. It seems like specific authors are targeted. Like, I don't know who Jodi Picoult pissed off in this world, but man, that she can't seem to publish a book without wanting to tear it out of classrooms immediately. But the reason there's so much discrepancy, and like you'll see like PEN America or these like kind of more literacy organizations, they'll say it's been over 1,000 books, and then the governor's office will say there's been 300 books that have been taken out of school libraries. A lot of that is due to what Renee was saying about how they'll pull books while they're reviewing. Now, as far as like what PEN America is concerned, if they're pulling a book off the library shelves, even if it's temporarily while reviewing, they consider that a ban on that book. And if it's reinstated, put back in the library, well, okay, then it's no longer banned. But while it's off the shelves, that's a book ban. You know, I mean, the kids can't read it in schools. That's a school book ban, as far as they're concerned. Which, I mean, it's logical. But as far as like the governor's office is concerned, that's not a book ban. That's, you know, that book is pending review, so even though it's not on the shelves, it hasn't actually been banned in any library, it's being reviewed. So you'll see in like news stories, and I apologize for the media being confusing, but you'll see in a lot of news stories, you know, oh, there's been, you know, 1,000 books banned, and then over here suddenly there's been, you know, a few hundred books banned, all that. That's the reason, is because the journalists writing these stories are relying on different sources that are telling different numbers because they have different definitions of what exactly a book ban is.
We have a surprise. We have a wonderful special guest, Senator Lori Berman, who wants to address these questions as well. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Sure. So first I want to say my understanding is Palm Beach County actually has not banned any books. What they do though is what she was talking about, where they'll say this is not appropriate for this age, this is not appropriate, you know, for elementary school or middle school, but you should know that your school board members are holding strong on this issue. They are not banning any books in Palm Beach County. And the other thing I want to say is it's the way all the laws have been done here in the state. So a lot of this came because of the sex education bill that we heard in the state, which said you can't teach sex education to any kids in K through 3. And then last year we changed it to K through 8. And then meanwhile the Department of Education changed it to K through 12, basically. So a lot of these books, that's the premise that they're using. And then the other premise that they're using is when we passed the bill called which we refer to as Don't Say Yay. They don't like it referred to that way, but that's what it is. And because of that bill, for instance, there's a book about 2 penguins who have a child. And because they are of the same sex, that book is often being banned, which is absurd, that we're banning a book about penguins in our schools in Florida. So it's all part of the same, you know, control. And I heard Dan Sweeney talk about the governor, Ashley Moody, filing a brief saying that school libraries should be government controlled, which is just crazy. You know, we need to have the decisions, we need to be able to have intellectual freedom, intellectual curiosity. We need to be allowing our students to be reading what they want to read, and unfortunately the education in the state of Florida and the leadership in the state of Florida is moving in the opposite direction, and that's why we are where we are today. So, but rest assured, Palm Beach County is not banning any books. Thank
you. More questions?
Yeah, I'm more of a comment. Can you stand up? I'm a snowbird from New York. I think it's over.
Hold it close to your mouth.
Sorry.
Okay, I will, oh my goodness, try again. Being from New York and being a snowbird down here, I find what's going on here appalling. I mean, beyond appalling. And the thought, I mean, who is teaching sex education from grades K through 3? I have 2 children of my own and grandchildren, and nobody's teaching sex ed. They don't teach it until 5th or 6th grade, at least in sane blue states. But what gives one person the power to say, I don't want this book? You spoke about this earlier, people who have no children, no involvement in the school system. Where is that power coming from? And I have to say, the only thing that made me smile, there are not a lot of things politically that are making me smile right now, but the Moms for Liberty, the wife, and the husband, I laughed myself silly when I read that. So, good luck. I want to get more involved than I have been, so I hope somebody can tell me how.
Yeah, I mean, the thing involving both of them is kind of funny. But we should, I mean, the other part involving him and the unnamed woman, I mean, obviously, not really a laughing matter, and you know, obviously he hasn't been charged with anything yet. But, you know, we'll see how that investigation goes, and, I mean, obviously, the thing involving both of them and that woman, you know, it's obviously there's a level of hypocrisy there, where you're, you know, banning books relating to anything having to do with LGBT topics, and there's a bit of a B part of that topic going on behind closed doors, but you know, we shouldn't forget though that amid all of that, there's an accusation of sexual assault, and you know, that part of it is it's deadly serious, and I think that's the part that really has the Republican Party desperately trying to throw that guy on his chair. If it had just been the you know, consensual stuff involving him and his wife and this other woman, it'd be embarrassing. But it wouldn't be where they're, you know, doing their damnedest to try to shove him out the door right now.
I just want to remind people too about the books that are outside because a lot of people are leaving. So I just want to make a little.
Because we don't have the kids, and I told those of you who were here, I told you, I think, why. We've been,
June, you have to really talk.
Is it on now?
Just got tucked right into it.
I'll talk right into it, okay. But next time we will. What's important is that you're here. You people care, and I'm looking for it. Remember, every major organization, every movement started small. Sometimes with one person. So somebody mentioned getting involved. You can write to me, read Man Books USA, gmail.com, or ask anybody. You can become a member, you can donate. I really appreciate that. And then we'll let you know what's the next step. I got a call from people for the American Way. Are you familiar with that group? That's the old one that Norman Lear started. Remember All in the Family? And Norman, and we just lost him. Anyway, they wanted to send a speaker today. They have no money, so I felt sorry for them. But in February, it's National Black History Month, and they wanted to know if Reband Books would join them, and maybe 3 or 4 other organizations and people from the press. One another, we'll get together. We'll band together.
Okay, we'll band together. Now, I'm usually good with words, and I get upset with this. This isn't coming. It's not down the road. This is here. The senator was talking about the process, and so was Dan, about who has the authority to ban the books and who could do this and that. It comes from the governor and the Republican majority, supermajority legislature. They made the laws, and those laws laid the groundwork, the legal foundation for the individual school districts to say, oh, well, Mrs. Jones doesn't like this book because it has the word damn in it, or whatever. And so we can review it and get rid of it if we want to. But it comes from the top. So I don't know what people are talking about when they say, gee, we've got to be careful. Authoritarianism is going. It's here. It's been here since he was elected. And I don't know what the hell the Floridians are doing. They're going around their business like nothing's happening. It's not the same, and I know it maybe, but it reminds me of the feeling of Germany in 1933.
slowly. Book banning is mind control. And then comes the newspapers. And then, of course, the teachers. And then the legislators. And you better not say anything, because no, we'll fire you, we'll put you in jail, or we'll kill you, or somebody will be at the door. All right, nobody's killing us yet, nobody's at the door yet, but they've already done it. Your kids, your grandkids, your neighbors' kids are in the school system being taught this crap. Now, you say, well, what do I care? I'm not in school, I don't even have kids in Florida. Guess what? They're going to graduate. And they're going to become your business people, your neighbors, your real estate agents, your legislators, your teachers, your newspaper people, with that thinking. They're all going to graduate with honors in propaganda. No! Yesterday I talked to, I don't know, small 5, 6 kids, Jewish kids, when I was over at the, near the Dunkin' Donuts trying to get kids to come. And they were asking me about, they didn't know there were any banned books, so they said, well, which ones? And I said, well, one is the Diary of Anne Frank, the children's version. These were all Jewish kids and they never heard of the Diary of Anne Frank. Later on, I talked to a bunch of the athletes from this school. They were all happened to be beautiful, really nice, really just bright, colorful, very enjoyable young black men. And they were just fun to talk to. So I said, well, what about the, I'm not talking about Palm Beach, right? But Dr. Martin Luther King's letters from Birmingham jail, they never heard of him. They never heard of him. They never heard of Huckleberry Finn. Okay, I can understand that, it's an old book. You know, maybe even one, they never heard of Fahrenheit 451. They never heard of anything, and I'm so happy to hear our panels basically tell you these kids don't read. If they're forced to, they get cliff notes. They don't read. And if you think that that is an education, then you are wrong. Because you have to read. You cannot call yourself educated by picking up bits and pieces of maybe truth, maybe lies from social media. Okay. Anybody else have something to say before we close? Because we have, yes? DJ, one more? Okay, last question. Last question? I'm sorry, I get really angry.
She's passionate.
Really quick, I don't want people to leave with a false sense of complacency and security. I know that 0 books have been banned in our county. I know that only 3 books have been officially banned in Broward County. But I'm...
Could you just wait 1 minute, because we can send you around to our books. Can you just hold on for a second so we can get you some books? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But the reality on the ground is that books are being taken out of classrooms at an alarming rate. I just retired from Broward County Schools. I had thousands and thousands of books that I had purchased with my own money in my classroom. I taught K-1 multiplication. I volunteer in the schools now, and I've watched teachers, they're being forced to scan every single book in their classroom, which is a very, very time-consuming process if you have thousands of books in your room, and most good teachers do. Some teachers are giving up and saying, I can't do it, and just getting rid of them. I spoke to a friend of mine who teaches in Tampa. She saw enormous bins of books that were just being abandoned and thrown out by teachers. Thrown away, gone to the garbage dump, because they don't have the time or energy to do all of these scans. In my friend's classroom recently in Broward County, the scan revealed that she had to remove a couple books from her classroom. 2 of them I know. One of them was Arthur's Teacher Trouble, PBS Arthur. The other one was a Clifford book. So I went through both books page by page to try to figure out what might be objectionable about these 2 books in a kindergarten classroom. The only thing I could see was on one page in the Arthur book, he's imagining Mr. Ratburn, his teacher, who has to live in his home for a while, in the bathtub. Now the bubbles are up to his chest, and he's a rat. But that's the only thing I could imagine it was rude for. The Clifford book, the only thing I could think was on one page, there is a picture of an alien spaceship and aliens getting out of it, and they're aliens. They're not wearing any clothing, but they also don't have any anatomy other than a head, arms, and legs.